Hello. There is no music. I don't know why. Everything is supposed to be working. It works, but it's not coming through my mixer. I must have made my mixer angry last night by playing guitar through it, so I'll figure it out. I'm a professional, right? Next time. It is Mysterious Forces Live, and it is Saturday, November 24th. 2018. We're well into the Thanksgiving holiday weekend and well on our way to Christmas. And boy, do we have a lot of stuff coming up here on this show. Next week, I'm going to go do some location shooting at a haunted ghost town here in Arizona. And I'm going to get some daytime footage and nighttime footage with the spirit box. And I will fill you in on that more next week. And some of these shows will be airing during the holidays, and that's so that we don't have to work on the holidays ourselves. And I hear a strange voice. What is that? It's a voice in the darkness. I'm back on camera tonight, as you can obviously see, but tonight's guest, Mr. William Pullin, the UFO historian, ufologist, is with me, but you will not see much of him because he was kind enough to come onto the show, but he is out and about. And so he's not really in a location where he's camera ready, but there he is in the car. We can hear him coughing. William Pullin, welcome to the show. Welcome back. You're our returning champion. Thank you so much for coming on.
I thank you for the opportunity. I love being on your show. So hope all is well out there in UFO land. Pardon my coughing.
Oh no, it's okay. How did your Thanksgiving go there in San Antonio?
It was good. Home is good. Quiet is good. And hung out with the family and watched too much football and ate a fair amount of food. So that's a good day.
No, that is a good day. I think that's the American tradition.
I believe so.
So tonight, as advertised, we are going to talk exclusively about the Stephenville, Texas sighting. This happened in January of 2008 in Stephenville, Texas, and the immediate surrounding area. And if you don't know, if you need a bit of a refresher, Stephenville, Texas is about 60 miles away from Crawford, Texas, where at the time President George W. Bush had a residence. And it's also relatively close to Fort Hood U.S. Army Base, but perhaps more importantly, near Dublin, Texas, just to the southwest, there's a military operating area for F-16s, and that military operating area is the size of Connecticut. And I think some of these factors came into play during these sightings, but I'm going to let William kind of paint the picture here and set the stage for this story, and then we'll jump right into it. William, what's the basic facts of the Stephenville sightings?
Well, the story kind of exploded January 8th of 2008. Multiple UFOs were sighted over Stephenville and the surrounding areas. Many were similar in descriptions to the Phoenix Lights sightings of March 13th, which was 1997. Some witnesses described craft over a mile across, so wide that if you extended a newspaper across from side to side, it was still not large enough to block out what was being sighted. Law enforcement officials made sightings, trained observers made sightings, and like some other occurrences through the history of the UFO issue, the military put forth an explanation and then recanted shortly thereafter. There were several explanations put forth by the Air Force, none of which really in any way fit the evidence of what was being reported. So as far as an explanation, it remains unexplained to this day. So and again, multiple witness. It was a multiple witness sighting. There was video recorded. Like I said, there were law enforcement officials that were part of that scenario. MUFON did a pretty good job of gathering sighting reports and collecting data, and so they were able to eliminate some sighting reports as non-legitimate, and they were able to eliminate some of the evidence that had been put forth as not being specifically unexplainable. But beyond that, a definite explanation is still beyond us at this point. So, but it's a pretty important sighting, and one of the last really strong multiple witness sightings that's occurred in the States. 2008 is about 10 years ago, so it's been a while. It's a pretty important sighting. So
It is, and there's a lot of good evidence that, as I mentioned at the top, there's radar tracking tapes, and these actually show aircraft in the vicinity, and they have no transponder coding. So these are vehicles on radar tracking without transponders, and that's evidence. That's FAA evidence right there. William, when you dig into a case like this, do you get any FOIA sheets yourself? Do you fill out forms and examine the documents, or do you have another source for those? Like, for instance, the Black Vault with John Greenwald's work.
I did some digging in the back vault. I made 2 FOIA requests, and I've yet to hear back. It's been a while. I every so often I get a response from FOIA years after the fact. I actually have forgotten that I made the request, and I made 2 of them with this case, and I sent both in 2012, and it's been 6 years and nothing yet. So, and that happens. I mean, the government / military drags its feet. So, but yeah, the Black Vault has been a great source of objective information, just data per se, and which allows us to really get our head around the case. Going back to the military angle, the story exploded January 8th. January 23rd, the Air Force threw out this explanation that after they had explained that there was no military aircraft in the area, they recanted and said there were 10 F-16 Fighting Falcons operating in the area. And ironically, they were operating out of an air base in Fort Worth called the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base. On that base, ironically, and it has no connection to this case, but contained within that base is Carswell Air Force Base. Carswell is where Roger Ramey instigated the cover-up of the Roswell incident back in '47. So there's a kind of a historical connection there. But again, these multiple explanations that the Air Force throws out or the military throws out that don't explain the evidence and don't debunk anything, it makes the military look incompetent. And you would think they would have a UFO officer to deal with the public relations issues that come forth when a sighting comes up, but that doesn't seem to happen, and it makes them look really bad. So,
do you think at some point the military decided that it was better to look incompetent than to discuss one of the biggest secrets that they maintain?
I don't know if that was actually a decision, rather than they're just comfortable with that scenario. That seems to be their method of operation since the 50s, and they seem comfortable with it. And I don't see any reason why it's going to stop. But I might be wrong. It might have been an actual decision made to conduct themselves in this way. But yeah, that's the way it's always been, and I don't see any sign that that'll change in the future. So
yeah. Yeah, I think they're kind of happy with that situation. When you studied this case, did you get into the work of Angela Joyner? She was a reporter for the Stephenville Empire Tribune at the time, and her face was on a lot of local TV reports, and I believe she even made onto some national news. And I know that she had spoken at some conventions. Is she still involved in this case, to your knowledge? And was her work a factor at all in your research?
I researched her journalistic efforts. I don't know if she's still involved in the case. I'm unaware of that. She might be. She did a pretty fair job of reporting the facts without making it without speculating, without trying to glorify the case like what happens with a lot of journalism nowadays. She did make a lot of appearances on national platforms discussing this case, um, but her involvement in the case, it seems to have faded as time has gone on. She might still be involved, but the case is kind of a little bit gone by the wayside nowadays because there's other topics that have are more um, I guess more popular in UFO lore nowadays. The Area 51 thing is kind of resurfaced. The secret space program, all these other concepts, whether or not they're legitimate or not, they seem more popular to talk about rather than this recent case. But yeah, she did a pretty decent job. I did research her stuff and at least investigate what she put forth, and most of it was relatively accurate. She didn't really waver too far from the facts, so which was good. That's good journalism.
Yeah, it is good journalism, and it was good to see someone from quote unquote mainstream media step up and deal with the subject in a serious manner. And that was refreshing as I was doing research into this topic. Um, I guess that have you seen the radar tapes? Is that footage available online anywhere?
I have not, and I made a. I hate to say this. I made a half-hearted effort to look a couple of months ago because one of my members in my group actually asked me about it, and I was unable to, on a very cursory examination, find any of them. So they may be out there, but I'm not sure at this point. After tonight, I'll probably my conscience will make me look for them, and I'll get back to you and let you know whether anything transpires. But as of this point, no, I've never seen them. So I would like to very much so because that's a great opportunity. That's evidence. That is instrumentality. Because there's a lot of other cases that have multiple witnesses where radar tracks were captured, but they've been erased or been lost, or somehow they're not available for researchers to examine. But in this case, they seem to be out there. So um, I'll start digging. I promise.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah.
no. Yeah, that's good. Um, can you get into any details if you have them about the types of craft that were described? Because I know you talk about kind of a classic TR3B slash Aurora type craft. And I know that if I'm not mistaken, weren't some of these multicolored balls, like they weren't all distinguishable as craft per se?
Yeah, there was some video evidence taken of multicolored lights in the sky, uh, but some of those videos were virtually impossible to decipher because of motion blur. They were taken with handheld instruments,
Uh,
so it makes it very problematic to examine it. I read one report of a triangular shaped craft, similar to Phoenix Lights slash Belgian Triangles kind of scenario. But these were vast craft. These were vast, like I mentioned before, over a mile across, which wasn't really reported in Belgium, but that was reported in Phoenix. There were witnesses, multiple witnesses, several of which were retired commercial airline pilots who sighted objects that were over a mile across. They were triangular in shape, moved slowly, relatively low altitude, but no sound. And as far as I know, we don't have anything like that in our arsenal. So that's very impressive. Um,
it is. You have an
yeah.
uncanny way sometimes of beating me to the punch. I was just going to follow that up with asking about your opinion on how. And wasn't this in your group? Didn't you just ask in UFO Real what percentage uh, of sightings do you think are terrestrial, human manufactured craft? And then how many are exotic craft of unknown origin? Didn't you ask that question recently?
Yeah, I've actually posed that question about 3 or 4 times in the last couple of years, but I've always worded it. I played with the words a little bit, so it doesn't sound so extraterrestrial slanted, or it doesn't sound like a debunking question. And I usually get the same responses where most individuals have the opinion that most of these sightings are of um, terrestrial origin, whether mundane or not, whether they're military apparatus, whether they're weather phenomenon, misidentified aircraft, things of that nature. So they're pretty grounded, my members, and they have the opinion that most of this stuff is terrestrial, but they consistently come up with about 5 to 10 to 15% of potentially extraterrestrial explanations. I myself, I'm more the ballpark about 5 or 10%, or potentially extraterrestrial. But with the military, the way it's doing things nowadays, there are a lot of sightings of um, undisclosed military apparatus. I use the word undisclosed because it I guess secret explains it, but at some point, most of these aircraft become known to the public at some point. So, but I think that I don't know if that's the case in Stephenville. It could be because there's a lot of um, military involvement in this case, but I don't know. It's still an unknown. So,
Do you think that the U.S. military has a full blown um, uh, what is the word? It totally escaped me. The word for not retrofitting, studying the technology. What is it?
Reverse engineering.
Reverse engineering. Thank you. Ta-da! You're the winner. Yes, reverse engineering. Do you think that the U.S. military has a complete reverse engineering program going?
No. I always get flack for this. You're going to get me in trouble again. I I don't think we're advanced enough. I think by definition, and I'm just this is just my opinion. I think whatever technology we may or may not have recovered, I think it's too far advanced to reverse engineer directly anyway. I think we might have gotten some ideas indirectly, but I think it would be like asking Leonardo da Vinci to decipher a VHS tape.
Right.
He's a brilliant man, but he wouldn't have the actual technology and know how to do it. And I think my opinion is that if we have recovered alien technology, we're not advanced enough to do anything with it directly, but indirectly we've gotten some ideas from it. But I might be dead wrong. So that remains to be seen.
No, I like that answer. That's a good, solid answer in my opinion. And I think it's based in reality. I guess I hadn't really thought about that. I kind of jokingly answered your question in your group at 17%. I was like, what's kind of an off-putting number? But like, who can know something so specific? But when it comes to reverse engineering, do you buy the Philip Corso book, Bill Burns, Philip Corso, The Day After Roswell? Do you buy that story?
You were just trying to get me in trouble.
No, I'm just that's what I'm here for. I'm asking the good questions.
I love that. No, I don't think that story is legitimate. I don't buy that story. I don't pretend to know the motivations behind writing the book per se, but I just don't think it's grounded in reality. Again, because of my personal opinion about the reverse engineering scenario. As far as Corso's background, I am guilty of not looking deep enough into his background to really have a specific take on his claims. But I just don't. My gut tells me that story is not legitimate. But that's my personal take on it. So I'm at odds with a lot of my members. I have posited a poll question about that. I can't recall. It's been a while, maybe over a year. And most of my members are of the reverse opinion. They believe the scenario that's put forth in that book. So I guess time will tell. If some things come to light, it may validate his stories. But as of right now, I don't believe his stories. No.
Do you think people are so quick to believe in the Corso story because it's a beautiful narrative and it's a great idea, right? It's kind of like an idealized version of what we would want it to be, where the technology was deciphered, and innovative ways were thought of for it to either serve our military or serve our industrial complex in some way. And then they farm that developed technology out to companies or other researchers and let them pretend to develop this technology and then release it, into the public sector. It's a nice story, and it's like something that I myself would want to believe in. But I think that there are too many people, like in the development of the transistor, for instance. I think that the development of the transistor and the history of that was too big and too involved so many people that it would be almost impossible to just, secret that technology to a couple people and tell them to pretend to build a back catalog of research to show how they got to that point.
Yeah, I agree. It's a romantic scenario, what you just described, what Corso puts forth in the book, and I think a lot of individuals really fell in love with that story, and I can understand why. I haven't background checked him as thoroughly as I should have, but I have looked into the history of these different technologies, and whether it's the transistor or fiber optics or night vision, and there is a fairly substantial timeline in history of these things being developed prior to, or at least the momentum was there for them to be developed prior to the Roswell incident. So historically, there's a timeline there to follow. So these technologies not necessarily would have been developed anyway, whether or not we deciphered the technology we recovered at Roswell, if we recovered something there. So, but it's like a lot of other scenarios in this field. A lot of things are believed quickly because they romanticize a story or they confirm someone's personal belief systems. And I think people need to really just kind of slow down and do their homework and really vet the information and then come to an informed conclusion and opinion, as opposed to just making a quick decision, which can be troublesome and problematic. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I do see you personally as an up and coming ufologist. Your group is pretty successful on Facebook, and you've been going around the San Antonio area and in Texas and doing different lectures, and people are starting to know who you are. And I want to encourage you to keep doing that because you're so knowledgeable in the field, and I think you have a lot to contribute. Do you think, kind of circling back to the Stephenville thing, because we're talking about reverse engineering and this exotic technology and the variety of craft that are seen, even within one general sighting, such as the Stephenville, Texas. As a researcher sitting where you're at from this vantage point, do you think there's anything that can be done to crack the Stephenville case? Is there any other technique that could be used or evidence that could be examined that could open that up? Or do you think because the military involvement in that incident was so heavy that they will just slam that away and no one will get anything else?
I don't know if there's much else to do. I mean, the military's approach and kind of heavy-handed at this with it. I don't think we could do much with the case. We can potentially gather more evidence as far as testimony, but that's very after the fact. And testimony, if it's not gathered correctly, is not really hard evidence. It's got to be gathered pretty quickly after the events. Examination of the radar traces, the radar tracks would be great. That confirms that's instrumentality. So you have instrumentality, you have multiple witnesses, which makes it a very strong case. But I think at best we might be able to eliminate potential explanations and whittle it down to a certain number of explanations. But to nail it down, I think they may be beyond us now. So it's been 10 years and the government has its way about it. So I think we're kind of, what we've got now is kind of what we're living with. So.
Right. No, I would agree. And I think that they're going to clamp down on this case because of that military involvement. We're down to the last 5 minutes of the show, and this has been a good discussion of this case. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. Have there been any recent cases that have caught your attention? I've seen some video footage pop up online in the last few days, and I guess the thing that caught my attention the most was the thunderstorm or the lightning storm footage where there appeared to be a triangular craft kind of up in the clouds. Did you see that footage?
I did. It was interesting. I haven't really had a chance to really look at it and really background check everything about it to really get an idea of what's really there or what isn't there. So I'll have to dig up with that. But of interest here locally, I had two individuals reach out to me via email last Thursday, and they were within about 2 miles geographically of each other. They described the same set of a sighting, the same type of sighting. They described a light, quick moving, diffuse, no sound, reddish in color. One individual who was further north than the other one described the light as leaving his area in a due south direction, which led directionally to the second sighting, the geographical location of that sighting. So I just barely interviewed one witness yesterday, and she gave me her testimony, and that was a multiple witness case. I mean, both sightings were. So that was interesting. It remains to be seen what transpires or what that turns out to be, but it was interesting. You had multiple witnesses, and they were both describing things in a very grounded way, as opposed to trying to assign a meaning to it or trying to add to the story. They were both very kind of black and white. They were kind of describing what they saw, and that was it. And it was refreshing to see that. So I will let you know what the end result of that investigation is. But that was interesting to have something happen actually locally here in San Antonio that didn't make the news at all.
Oh, it did. It did make the news.
No, it didn't.
Oh, it
Not
didn't.
at all. No,
Oh.
no. Which I actually thought added to the validity of the story. If it was in the news, it might have been glorified by the local journalists here. The local media in San Antonio is not journalistically sound. So the fact that this story was not covered, which means they weren't really fishing for ratings. So both reports that I received, the individuals did not know each other at all. They're miles from each other. There's no contact there. But the descriptions of what they saw matched exactly, which was interesting to my eye. So, yeah.
How did they find out? How did they find you?
On Facebook, actually.
Wow.
They found me through my group, and they looked me up on my personal profile and got my email there and contacted me that way. And that's great. That's why it's there for. So that was interesting, and they both reported it Thursday, no more than an hour after it happened, which was a big deal too. They reported it almost immediately after it happened, which really adds to the ability of somebody to investigate it, as opposed to hearing about a case years later. There's really nothing you can do. So that quick response goes a long way.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, as we were talking this evening, we're down into the last minute, and we'll wrap it up in a second. But something crossed my mind as we were talking. I was listening to you. Would you want to do a show sometime next year that would deal with, maybe we could do a tutorial, like if you have a sighting, how to kind of stop and collect yourself and like capture as much data as possible? I want to give an example. I was listening to John Greenwald's show, and John Greenwald, especially in talking about telephone cameras, said, do not zoom in. Zooming in on a picture in your cell phone camera, that's not an actual lens that's in there like in a traditional camera. And you're not actually, you're blowing up the picture digitally, but you're not actually zooming in the true scientific physical sense that you would as you're manipulating a lens on a camera. So you do yourself a disservice when you zoom in on an object John Greenwald said there's other ways to digitally zoom in and examine objects. So, for instance, don't zoom in with your cell camera.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so,
then,
yeah, maybe stuff like that. Maybe we could do a little tutorial. I think it'd be interesting.
that would be, I am at your service as always. So
Awesome. Well, William, thank you so much. And thank you for being here. We've been going since August 24th, but this is the first year for Mysterious Forces Live, and I plan on having this show around for many more years. Thank you so much, William, for being on. And for you, the listener, imagine the happy music right now. Doon, 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 doon. It's driving me crazy that my music is not working, and I have no explanation. I played guitar last night, but it should have nothing to do with it. And I like having my music. I dropped a hint on my Facebook page, Mysterious Forces Live on my Facebook page. I'm going to be interviewing in January a well-known British guitar player who is playing with a very well-known goth band that's doing a retrospective tour right now, and we will be at the show. I don't think that's not going to be live stream. We will capture that, and we'll take it back, and we'll do a little post-production, and we'll present that. But we will definitely present that in January. So look for the hint on my Facebook page as to who that might be. It'll be a giant hint. And I'm going to go do filming at the beginning of next week at a haunted ghost town, and I will release details on that. And I guess I do want to go ahead and drop this info bomb. I am working on a trip to the gates of Area 51 to do a show at the gate of Area 51. And that'll be sometime early next year, and we're going to do it in the cold weather, and we're not going to wait for it to get hot. So we'll have to bundle up, but I've already got the transportation arranged, and we will do a big promotion for this. This will be a big deal, but we're going to go do a show there at the gates of Area 51, and that'll be exciting. I will be thrilled. William, thank you so much for tuning in. You, the viewers, the listeners, the subscribers, thank you so much. Once again, Lisa P., thank you for your loyalty. You're my favorite viewer because you're always here for us. And thank you for everyone that jumped into the chat room tonight. Ray Dog, Gaming Minister, Mr. Karate, I believe. Lisa P., of course, as I mentioned, and the Professor at Pursuing X. Thank you so much. If you haven't pressed like, show me some love. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. And please, please share this video if you like it. And I've kind of topped out at 274 subscribers, and I'm trying to get the next push. So hopefully I can break that 275 mark and keep some forward momentum going with the show. So I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy what's left of your weekend before you get back into the rat race and the holiday madness at the top of next week. And stay tuned. We have some interesting things coming for the holidays and really exciting things coming up on the show next year, including a change in look of the set and lots of different changes. So stay tuned. Thank you for being here, everyone. Have a great Saturday night and be safe.